My son told me I was too ugly to attend his wedding. He said I would embarrass him and his guests. So I made sure he regretted it all his life. Let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Steve and Gary from Atlanta. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. My name's Malcolm. I'm 58. I build things. Quietly. From the ground up. People know me around here not because I talk loud or smile too wide, but because when a problem shows up, I've usually already fixed it. I founded my company when I was 26. I kept my head down. Worked through 2 recessions, 3 lawsuits, a divorce, and 1 god-awful fire. Still here. I've never been called handsome. That's never bothered me much. Until my son made it feel like a crime. David is my only child. I raised him after his mother left. She said I was emotionally distant, and maybe she was right. I didn't take him to baseball games. I didn't throw birthday parties with clowns. But he never went hungry. Never missed a field trip. He wore dry clothes and came home to the smell of something cooking. That's the kind of love I know how to give, sturdy and visible. 2 months before his wedding, he asked me to meet him at a cafe near his office. Not our usual place. Already felt off. He showed up late, smiling like he'd rehearsed it. Sat across from me and didn't even ask how I was doing. Just jumped into it. "Dad, I wanted to talk about the wedding," he said, smoothing his tie like he was in a damn interview. I nodded. "Venue all set?" "Yeah. Everything's almost finalized. There's just one thing." He looked around the cafe like he didn't want the walls to hear. "Look, this isn't easy to say, but I think it's better if you don't come." I thought I misheard him. Maybe the music was too loud. "What?" He didn't blink. "To the wedding. I think it's best if you're not there. It's not personal." The way he said not personal was personal. A surgeon's scalpel of a phrase. He said it like he was saving me the embarrassment. Like this was a favor. "I don't understand," I said. My voice stayed even, but something under my ribs started to twist. He sipped his espresso like he needed to wash the words down. "It's just optics. It's going to be a very curated crowd. Press, her side of the family, investors. I want the photos to feel a certain way. Photos, optics, investors. You're ashamed of how I look." It wasn't a question. He winced like the truth stung him too. "I'm not ashamed, Dad. I just don't think people will get it. You've always been more rugged. You know? Intense. Some people might find it off-putting. Off-putting. This boy, this man I raised, who grew up in the house I paid off before I turned 40, who I bailed out when he crashed my truck, who I pushed through college with every favor I had left, was telling me I didn't fit his image. I didn't get angry. That came later. Right then, I just felt cold. Like my blood stopped trying to warm me. I leaned back, nodding slowly. "You're serious." "I'm sorry. I know it sucks. But you can still watch the live stream," he offered, like that was a kindness. I stared at him for a long time. Not at his face, exactly, but past it, like trying to see the boy I remembered behind the man sitting there now. I couldn't find him. That boy would sit on my shoulders at the lake, throw sand in my beard and laugh like I hung the moon. Now he was trying to crop me out of his life like a bad photo. "Okay," I said finally. "Okay." He looked relieved. Like I'd made it easy. Like I hadn't just swallowed something that would take years to digest. I stood up. Left a 20 on the table even though I hadn't touched my coffee. He didn't stand. Didn't hug me. Just said, "Thanks for understanding." I didn't answer. I walked out into the wind, and it hit harder than it should have. I drove home with my hands so tight on the wheel, my knuckles cracked open by the time I got there. Inside, I found the wedding invitation still pinned to my fridge. Cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. Fancy. I stared at it for a long time. My name was on it, in theory. But I saw now it had never really been for me. I sat down on the couch in the dark. My dog, Jasper, patted over and rested his head on my knee. I rubbed his ear absent-mindedly and whispered, "Guess I'm not pretty enough for the pictures, huh, buddy?" He didn't move. Just stayed there with me. I didn't cry. I don't think I can anymore. But I felt something settle in me that night. Heavy and slow and quiet. It wasn't just pain. It was the end of something. A line had been drawn. And even if he begged me to cross it later, apologized, cried, repented, I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to forget the moment my son looked me in the eye and decided that what I looked like mattered more than what I'd done for him. I've been through worse. Fires, lawsuits, betrayals. But this was different. Because this wasn't just a rejection. It was erasure. I didn't go to the wedding. I didn't buy a suit, didn't ask for the live stream link, didn't so much as look at the weather. On the morning of the ceremony, I sat in my garage, drank lukewarm coffee straight from the pot, and stared at the shelves I built when David was 10. The ones that used to hold his plastic trophies, little soccer guys frozen mid-kick, covered in dust. Now they held power tools and an old photo of us on the boat, sunburned and grinning. I didn't take it down. I just stared at it like it owed me an answer. The house was too quiet that day. The kind of quiet that isn't peace, just absence. Like everything good had packed up and left overnight. I walked from room to room just to prove to myself I was still there. His old room was exactly how he left it after college. Too clean, too curated. Notebooks untouched, medals lined up like evidence. But no trace of life. No mess. No him. The bed was made so tight I sat down just to wrinkle it. I sat there for a long time, hands on my knees like I was waiting for someone to come home. I didn't tell anyone what he said to me. Not at work, not to friends. That kind of humiliation you don't share. You let it rot inside you until it calcifies into something else. Resolve, maybe. Or contempt. Or just plain silence. I didn't show up Monday morning. Didn't answer calls. I let the engine of the company run without me. They didn't panic. I'd built the place to outlast me. But a few of the old-timers noticed. Cheryl, my assistant for 15 years, left a sticky note on my desk that said, "Hope everything's all right." I didn't reply. I started unplugging from everything. Emails, texts, conversations. I stopped going to the office altogether and told myself it was a break. But really, I was waiting for something, some signal, some sliver of remorse. It never came. No message. No apology. Not even a picture from the day. The invitation was still on my fridge. Cream-colored cardstock curling at the corners now, edges yellowing. I stared at it every morning while pouring black coffee into a chipped mug from a father-son fishing trip we took 15 years ago. The handle was cracked. I never fixed it. It wasn't about the wedding. I knew that. This wasn't one bad day. It was just the clearest moment in a slow betrayal that had been brewing for years. Every time he canceled dinner. Every time he introduced me to someone without calling me dad. Every time he shifted when I hugged him, like it made him uncomfortable to be seen with someone who wore old boots and didn't smile enough. He didn't just exclude me from his wedding. He erased me from the version of his life he wanted to show the world. I was the before photo to his curated after. A few days later, I got a thank you card in the mail. Generic, signed by his new wife, not him. "Thank you for your support during our special day." I didn't even open it fully. Just read the first line, felt my stomach twist, and tossed it into the trash. The whole envelope smelled like lavender and expensive decisions. It landed beside a broken tape measure and an empty box of screws. I took the trash out that night like I always did. Like nothing had changed. But something had. It was subtle, but it was real. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was deciding. I started by clearing out the guest room. The one he always stayed in when things went wrong. After breakups. During job transitions. When he had a fight with his mom and needed a place that didn't judge him. I took the old bed apart and leaned the frame against the wall. Boxed up the blankets. Took down the photo of us on that mountain trip where we got lost for 2 hours and laughed like idiots when we finally found the car. I wrapped the photo in newspaper and put it in the attic. Not to throw away. Just to put somewhere he'd never find it. That room became an office. Not a fancy one. Just a desk, a lamp, and a chair that doesn't squeak. A space that was mine, with no history attached to it. The first night I sat in there, I opened a blank notebook and wrote a list. Not of names. Of truths. Things I'd swallowed for years because I thought it was what fathers were supposed to do. Things like, he only calls when he needs something. He never thanks you. He never looks you in the eye. He talks about legacy but doesn't respect the hands that built his. I filled 5 pages. I didn't burn with anger. Not yet. This wasn't fire. This was cold strategy. A kind of internal withdrawal, like closing shutters before a storm. I didn't want to scream or smash things. I wanted silence, space, control. I'd spent most of my life giving time, money, shelter, my name. And now, I was finally starting to understand the cost. You give too much without conditions, and eventually, they forget it was a gift. They think it was owed. And when you stop, they call you cruel. But I was done being generous at my own expense. One night, I looked in the mirror longer than usual. Not to check my reflection, but to confront it. Wrinkles, uneven skin tone, rough hands. A face that had aged without apology. I remembered how he said I was rugged. How he looked through me like I was some embarrassing relic from a past he didn't want to explain. I studied myself until I didn't feel shame anymore, just distance. Like I was looking at a man I used to know. And I said out loud, "You still built everything. Don't forget that." The next day, I walked into my own company and asked Cheryl to start preparing transfer documents. No fanfare. No press release. Just quiet moves. I didn't tell David. He didn't even know yet that I'd stopped answering emails that had his name on them. He was busy, I assumed, playing the part of the successful son with a curated life. Meanwhile, the foundations beneath him were already shifting. Gently. Irrevocably. And I hadn't even started yet. I didn't plan revenge. Not at first. That word never even crossed my mind. I wasn't twisting a mustache or drawing up blueprints. It was quieter than that. Slower. Like how a wall learns to stop letting sound through. Like how calluses don't form overnight, but over time, until you can't feel the damage anymore. I just started making adjustments. Subtractions, mostly. Little ones. Until I realized I'd already taken more from him than he'd ever expected. And the beauty was, he hadn't even noticed. That's what happens when someone assumes you'll always be there. They forget to look when you're gone. First, the trust account. The one I'd set up when he turned 18. Back then, it felt like planting a seed in case he ever got lost. He didn't know it, but I doubled the fund after his first job fell through. I told myself it was support. Safety. But it wasn't. It was a leash. One I didn't even realize I was wearing. So I met with my lawyer. A woman named Janet who's been with me since I was still answering my own phones. And I said, I want it dissolved. She didn't ask why, just nodded like she already knew. Next was the house. The one I gave him when he got engaged. It's yours, I said back then. A real start. But I never transferred the deed. I held on to it, just in case. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I knew what people forget when they think love is permanent. Nothing stays unless you secure it. So I called the real estate office, checked on zoning, and got the paperwork moving. Not to sell it, yet, but to reclaim it legally. Quietly. I didn't kick him out. I just started the clock ticking on what he thought would last forever. Then came the business. The company he was set to inherit. I'd never made that formal either. Just assumed he'd slide into place one day, clean suit and a firm handshake. He already had the title of Director of Development, though he did less developing than he did delegating. Still, the board tolerated him. He was my son. That was enough. Until I made it not enough. I started calling in old debts, people who owed me favors, people who remembered me when I still wore borrowed shoes. I asked quiet questions, planted doubts. Do you think he's ready? How did that last project go? Just nudges. One night, after a board call where he showed up late and unprepared, I stayed behind on the line. Cheryl lingered too. She didn't say much, just cleared her throat and said, You've been doing a lot of thinking lately. I nodded. You ever regret how we built this? I asked. She paused. Then, only that we built it assuming someone else would care as much as you did. That hit me harder than I expected. Because she was right. I built this thing like a cathedral. And somewhere along the line, I handed the keys to someone who only wanted to rent the pews. David called me that weekend. Left a voicemail. Hey, Dad. Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? His voice sounded casual, but not comfortable. Like he knew something had shifted but couldn't name it. I didn't call back. Instead, I pulled the file from my cabinet, the one labeled Succession Strategy. I dusted it off and wrote a new name at the top, Marcia Reyes. She'd been with the company since her 20s. Sharp, quiet, underestimated. She reminded me of myself, but smarter. I called her into my office Monday morning, told her she was about to start shadowing me. She blinked, then nodded once. I wasn't angry when I made the decision. That's important to understand. This wasn't punishment. It was correction. David had shown me, clearly, painfully, how little he valued the roots that held him up. And I decided it wasn't my job to keep propping up someone who couldn't see me. I wasn't going to fight for his attention. I was going to disappear from the places he assumed I'd always be. That's a kind of revenge too. Not fire. Not fury. Just absence. A slow removal of ground until the person finally looks down and realizes there's nothing left to stand on. A week later, I saw him at the office. First time since the wedding. He walked in like nothing had changed. Smiling. Nodding at people. The prince visiting his future kingdom. I watched him from my office window. Saw how people avoided eye contact. How Cheryl didn't even stand to greet him. He made it halfway to my door before I stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Hey," he said, arms out like we were long-lost friends. "Been meaning to catch up." I nodded once. "Now's not a good time. We're in transition." His smile faltered. Transition? I didn't explain. Just closed the door. That night, I walked through the house and started taking down old frames. Not angrily. Just methodically. Like someone packing up after a long lease. Pictures from his high school graduation. His college move-in day. The day he pitched at that Little League tournament and struck out the side. I wrapped each one in newspaper and placed them in a box labeled David, Archive. I didn't throw them away. That would have meant I hated him. I didn't. Not even now. I just didn't recognize him anymore. And I was done keeping shrines to ghosts. In the garage, I found his toolbox, the one I bought him when he was 12 and wanted to fix things like you, Dad. It still had the label he wrote in Sharpie, David's kit. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. Then I placed it on the shelf next to mine, closed the door, and shut off the light. If he ever came looking for it, it'd still be there. But I wouldn't remind him. He'd have to come looking on his own. And I wasn't going to wait anymore. It didn't hit him all at once. That would have been too easy, for him, I mean. David was the kind of man who needed to be taught slowly. Subtle consequences. Delayed echoes. He'd grown up surrounded by safety nets so thick he'd mistaken them for the ground itself. And so when they started to vanish, he didn't trip. He drifted. Confused. Entitled. Like someone who knocks on a door and assumes the knob will always turn, simply because it always has. I made sure those doors stayed closed. Not slammed. Not bolted. Just unwelcoming. Quietly, irrevocably locked. The first lock was the company. It started with access. His badge stopped working one Monday morning. He called Cheryl twice. She didn't answer. He tried mine. Straight to voicemail. I was upstairs in the executive suite, sipping coffee with Marcia as she reviewed acquisition plans he should have handled a year ago. "He's calling," she said without looking up. "I know," I said. "Let it ring." Outside the building, he stood holding his phone like it betrayed him. Eventually, security came. Polite. Professional. "Sorry, sir. We have no active profile for you in the system." That was true now. Legally, factually, forever. He emailed me that night. Long message. Rambling. Trying to sound composed. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. My badge isn't working. Cheryl isn't responding. I'd appreciate some clarity." Clarity. That word. I stared at the screen, imagined him writing it in a room full of confusion, thinking this was just some clerical error. I closed the email without replying, but I did forward it to legal. Told them to begin the formal separation filings. His name was no longer associated with any internal division. His title? Expunged. His benefits? Frozen. His email access? Scheduled for deletion. All with the calm of an accountant filing a return. Then came the friends. His contacts. The network he thought he owned, but didn't realize had always been mine. Most of them owed me, not in favors, but in foundation. I built careers, connected investors, opened doors for men and women who never forgot who unlocked them. I didn't ask them to blacklist David. I didn't need to. I just started talking. Small talk with weight. He's looking for something new. Still finding his footing. A loaded silence here. A sip of bourbon there. Wouldn't want to hand off something delicate just yet. Not one of them said no to my face. They just didn't pick up his call. I started getting reports. Third hand. People he'd reached out to. Job interviews that never materialized. Projects he'd pitched that ghosted him. At one point, I heard he drove 3 hours to meet with a startup founder in person, only to be told there was no real role for someone with his background. His background, of course, was made up of my scaffolding. And without it, he looked like what he really was. Untested, unprepared, untethered. The empire he thought he'd inherit had vanished like a mirage. And the worst part? I didn't take it from him. He gave it away by assuming it was his. Eventually, he showed up at my house. I knew he would. I didn't bother turning off the lights. Let him see that I was home, sitting by the window, drinking the same coffee he once said smelled too bitter. He knocked once, waited, knocked again. Dad? I know you're in there. His voice was smaller than I remembered. Not scared, just cracked. I didn't answer. I let Jasper bark once, then fall silent. My son stood outside for 7 minutes. I counted. 7 full minutes before he walked away. He never looked back at the window. That part surprised me. He used to glance back, even as a kid. The eviction came next. Legal took care of the notice. He hadn't changed the locks, another assumption. I gave him 60 days. Generous, legally. More than generous, considering the words that had started all of this. I didn't go by the property. I didn't want to see what it had become. A shrine to ego, probably. White walls, curated furniture, mirrors in every hallway. He called again after the letter landed. This time, he left a voicemail. Dad, please, can we just talk? I don't understand what's happening. Just call me back. I saved the message. Not because I wanted to hear it again, but because it marked the exact moment his voice shifted from authority to confusion. He came to the office one last time. Desperate, I think. He didn't wear a suit. No tie. Just a rumpled shirt and eyes that hadn't slept right. He tried to bypass the front desk, but Marcia was already waiting by the elevator. You're not allowed in, she said calmly. He tried to push past her. She didn't move. If you make this difficult, I'll have to report it. He stopped then, looked around like someone waking up in the wrong house. This was supposed to be mine, he said quietly. Marcia didn't blink. Nothing's yours until you earn it. Then she stepped aside, and security walked him out. I watched it all from the top floor. The way he moved, like a man who just realized the walls he leaned on weren't made of stone, but smoke. I thought I'd feel triumph, or rage, or grief. But what I felt was simpler, completion. I wasn't punishing him anymore. I was freeing myself from the weight of expectation, from the illusion of obligation, from the lie that blood alone makes someone your legacy. Legacy isn't about name. It's about alignment. And he broke that the moment he looked me in the eye and decided I didn't belong beside him. He sent one final message that night. No greeting. No punctuation. Just 4 words. I'm sorry. I'm lost. I didn't reply. Because some doors don't open again. Not because they're locked. But because no one inside is waiting anymore. He asked to meet. He didn't beg, not at first. But the message had the smell of someone who'd already lost everything but hadn't accepted it yet. Please, he wrote. I just want to talk. Just us. I didn't respond for 3 days. Let the silence thicken. Then, I sent one word. Tomorrow. I chose the diner. Not some executive cafe or high-rise brunch spot he could hide behind. No curated playlists, no skyline view. Just Formica tables, cracked leather booths, and a waitress who's worked there since the Clinton administration. A place where nobody pretends to be anything more than what they are. He got there early. That surprised me. He used to be late to everything, birthdays, school plays, even his mother's funeral. He stood when I walked in, like that would reset something. Dad, he said. I nodded. Saturday. Let the quiet do what words couldn't. The waitress poured coffee. He didn't touch his. I drank mine slowly, watching the steam curl upward like a slow exhale from God. Finally, he spoke. I don't know where to start. His voice cracked on start. Not a performance. Real this time. But I didn't give him the relief of a response. I just waited. Let him squirm inside the space he created. He tried again. I messed up. I see that now. I was under pressure. There were expectations. Her family, her people. I stopped him with a look. No words. Just one long, tired stare that reminded him I wasn't here to validate his excuses. He swallowed hard. I didn't mean what I said. About the wedding. About you. He looked down, like the table might absorb the shame for him. I was trying to make things perfect, and I thought he trailed off. I waited. He looked up. Eyes red, but not from tears. From exhaustion. I thought you'd understand. And there it was. The wound he kept wrapping in silk. You said I was ugly, I said. Calm. Factual. Like I was reading it off a form. He flinched. No, I didn't. You said I'd ruin the photos, I cut in. Still quiet. Still level. You told me I didn't fit. That I'd embarrass you. You said it wasn't personal. But it was. And you know how I know that? I leaned in. Because you said it to me. His face broke open then. Not in grief, but in realization. Like he was finally seeing the replay in slow motion, hearing the words from the outside in. He buried his face in his hands. I was wrong. God, I was so wrong. I let that hang. Then I leaned back. Took another sip. Let the bitterness root on my tongue. I'm not angry anymore, I said. And I wasn't. Anger's a flame. It burns out. What I felt now was colder. Clearer. I'm done. He blinked. Done. I nodded. Being your fallback. Being invisible. Carrying you on my back while you pretend you climbed here alone. He shook his head hard, like he could physically reject the words. You're not invisible, Dad. I see you now. I get it. I do. Just, please. I don't have anything left. That part rang true. He looked hollow, like someone whose mask had melted clean off. I'm not here to rescue you, I said. I'm here to mark the moment. Because someday, you're going to tell a version of this story where I abandoned you. And I want you to remember, you left me first. He reached across the table. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just a hand, palm up, trembling slightly. I didn't take it. Dad, he whispered. Please. I'll do anything. I'll work from the ground up. I'll go back to school. I'll volunteer. I'll fix this. I looked at his hand. Thought about the little boy it used to be attached to. The one who called me Superman. The one who fell asleep in my lap during storms. But that boy was gone. And the man in front of me? He'd buried his father in shame. Not a coffin. Just silence. Condescension. The kind of betrayal that isn't loud, it's surgical. The kind that cuts you, and then tells you it's your fault for bleeding. I stood up. Dropped a 20 on the table. I disowned you, I said, finally. Long before the wedding. You just gave me the paperwork. He stood too, panicked now. Dad, please, don't leave it like this. I don't know who I am without you. I looked him dead in the eyes. Then maybe it's time you find out. I walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. Some exits don't slam. They don't echo. They just close, like a chapter that's finally reached its last, bitter period. I got in my truck, turned the key, and sat there while the engine warmed. My hands were steady. The sky was overcast, but the light felt clean. Inside, I wasn't boiling. I wasn't shaking. I felt done. Not defeated. Not triumphant. Just released. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally let it go. That kind of peace? It's rare. And it doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from clarity. And boundaries drawn in final, unbroken lines. He stayed inside the diner. I saw through the window he didn't move. Just sat there with his face in his hands while the waitress refilled his untouched cup. I didn't hate him. Not anymore. But I didn't love him either. Love requires presence. Recognition. Something mutual. What we had was memory. Faded, partial, and no longer in circulation. I had let him carry my name long enough. He had broken it in half, worn it like a costume, then discarded it when it didn't fit the party. Let him build his own now, brick by brick. From the rubble. If he can. You expect something to happen after you walk away from your only son. Fireworks. Collapse. Some seismic shift inside your chest. But it wasn't like that. It was quiet. Like turning off a faucet that had been leaking for years. At first, the silence felt wrong. Like I'd missed something. Like I should go back. But I didn't. Instead, I went home. Took Jasper for a long walk. Didn't say a word to him. He didn't need it. He trotted beside me like he understood. The night was cold, and for the first time in months, it didn't feel like a punishment. I didn't hear from David again. Not the next day. Not the week after. Not through friends or coworkers or late-night apologies. Nothing. And that was fine. That was the point. I didn't remove him from my life to make him chase me. I did it because he'd turned me into something I couldn't live with, a man who waited to be seen. That's not who I am. That's never been who I am. Somewhere along the way, I started accepting scraps, half-hugs, hollow phone calls, dinner invitations with expiration dates. I called it love, but it was survival. And I was done surviving people who didn't look back. I boxed up the last of his things the following Saturday. The house was quieter now, cleaner. Not just the walls, but me. There's a difference between loneliness and solitude. I used to confuse the two. Used to think presence meant value. But David's presence had become a slow erosion. A constant reminder that love, if not returned, can start to rot. The photo of us on the boat. I took it down from the garage. Looked at it for a long time. Then I slid it into a folder marked 1990s. Not in anger, just in acceptance. Some versions of him were real. They just don't live here anymore. The house, the company, the trust, all of it had been reset. Not out of spite, but necessity. I gave Marcia full control of the transition plan. She moved into the corner office like she'd always belonged there. The team didn't flinch. Cheryl brought me a cake on my last official day. Vanilla. No writing on top. I sat in the break room while the others clapped awkwardly and made jokes about retirement. I smiled, ate one bite, then left the plate behind. Let them think what they wanted. I wasn't leaving in defeat. I was leaving because I'd already taken back the one thing no title can touch, my name. I sold the house 2 months later. Downsized to something with less echo. A single-story place on the edge of town with a garage that only fits one car and a view of trees that don't ask questions. Jasper adjusted faster than I did. I thought I'd miss the old floors, the creaking steps, the grooves in the hardwood where David dragged his toy trucks. But I didn't. I missed the man I thought I'd raise. The version of him who looked up to me. Who didn't flinch at grease on my shirt or call my truck too loud to park outside his condo. That man never grew up. He just dissolved. I kept the toolbox. Not his. Mine. Still had the same smell, iron, oil, sweat. The kind of scent no cologne can erase. One afternoon, I opened it and found a screw I'd forgotten how to match. I sat there with it in my palm for 10 minutes, then laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it reminded me that even things that don't fit anymore once had a purpose. You don't throw them out. You don't worship them either. You just hold them, remember, then put them back in the box and close the lid. That's all closure is, knowing what to keep and what to let settle. I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. The handwriting was his. Slanted. Clean. The envelope smelled faintly like cologne I'd never wear. Inside, a single sheet. Just a few lines. I wake up every day with your silence in my ears. I used to think you were harsh. Now I understand you were honest. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I see you now. I really do. No name. No signature. Just the imprint of someone who'd finally looked inward. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some truths don't require acknowledgement. They just need to land somewhere. I folded the paper and slid it into the back of the drawer where I keep tax returns and property deeds. It didn't belong on the fridge. It wasn't a resurrection. Just a relic. One morning, I passed the hallway mirror. Usually, I ignore it. Years of conditioning. But this time I stopped. Looked at myself. Not quickly. Not critically. Just looked. The skin was weathered. The eyes a little dimmer. The jaw set like always. I didn't look like a man who belonged in a curated wedding photo. I looked like a man who built things. Broke his back for people who now couldn't recognize the blueprint. And for the first time, I didn't care. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask the reflection to change. I nodded at it, then walked away. Peace isn't a place. It's not even silence. It's the moment you stop editing yourself for people who won't read the full story anyway. It's standing in the middle of your own life and not asking for applause. Just breathing. Just being. I found that peace not because my son apologized, but because I stopped waiting for him to. That's the twist no one sees coming. The real revenge isn't what I took from him. It's what I gave back to myself. Time. Space. Wholeness. Legacy isn't something you leave behind. It's something you reclaim before you go. If this story hits something deep in you, if you've ever been dismissed, erased, or underestimated by the very people you built your life around, don't scroll just yet. Take a second to comment what you would have done in Malcolm's place. And if you want more stories like this, about quiet strength, emotional justice, and the power of walking away, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's simply not looking back. See you soon in the next one.